So with the recent announcement of Marvel Tokon Fighting Soul, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, by the way, I saw a really interesting quote on a PS blog post by one of the producers working on the game, I believe it was. He said, "Lastly, we wanted to sprinkle in a few surprises and leave room for characters who have never been playable in a fighting game before." So I read that sentence and I absolutely love that take. I love that approach for this game, especially since it obviously does draw roots from Marvel vs. Capcom. Unfortunately, due to licensing stuff and the push of the MCU, there were characters that were prioritized for the last few Marvel vs. Capcom entries that I feel like maybe might not have been the best pick in the long run. So I'm really glad that they're doubling back and doing a pretty much Marvel vs. Marvel fighting game, because that really gives the roster a chance to stretch its legs, really gives them the chance to make some deep cuts with characters and also bring in characters that might not be as popular based in the MCU or might have grown to popularity. I mean, recently with the inclusion of Star-Lord, I mean, previously with Marvel vs. Capcom 3, you saw Rocket come in, and again, at the time I was a lot younger, I had no idea who Rocket was, but even with this one, it's night and day seeing how Star-Lord is coming out and being on the starting roster along with Miss Marvel. So I really like what they're doing with the character so far, and with that in mind, I did want to just kind of go through a list today of 25 characters that I've thought of that have not been in other Marvel fighting games previously that would really fill out the roster and kind of just make it a more full game. And again, this sort of stuff is speculation only. I don't have any sort of insight, any sort of affiliation with artists or anything like that. I'm just a guy who loves making speculation type content. Speaking of which, if you do like what I have here, I am going to be doing more speculation content on upcoming Marvel, DC games, hypothetical games, things of that sort. I usually do Marvel Rivals as that's caught my attention more recently, but I love fighting games more than any other genre, so I just wanted to go ahead and tackle this. And first up, I have probably the one that I've seen the most rolling around online. Since this is a 4 versus 4 fighting game, I think it's only natural that the Fantastic Four would make it in. Thing, Human Torch, Invisible Woman, Mr. Fantastic. For the Thing, I could absolutely see him as a boxer, kind of boxing style gameplay, maybe like Dudley from the Street Fighter series, but obviously a lot slower. Ben does typically take up that fighting stance whenever he is involved in scraps. I do like that style for him. I think that'd be really cool. For his super, I really don't know what that might be. I mean, ultimately there was a run in the comics where he would turn human for like a week, and he was fighting the Hulk at the time, right as it was about to turn him back into a human. So kind of at the 11th hour, right as the clock was running out, he did this huge punch that knocked out Hulk, which he, hadn't really won a fight against Hulk prior to this. So I think that would be a really cool ultimate to utilize. Obviously, I'm not gonna, run through supers and the movesets for all these guys, just a very fleshed out basic thing. And there's some at the end that I actually don't really have too much of an idea for. So, with those, by all means, at the end, feel free to let me know your opinions on what they might play like. Next, though, I do have Human Torch, obviously. He has not been in any other fighting games. I think he may have been in like a superhero squad fighting game. He was also in Marvel Imperfects. Again, I didn't do research on every Marvel fighting game, but I did want to try to be as accurate as I could. But anyway, Human Torch, I could obviously see him as an anti-air type of character, maybe having things and projectiles that kind of knock people out of the air, or these big like pillars of fire that he can summon out of the ground. I'd obviously think that he should have some sort of projectile, maybe not a zoning type character, but again, with the way that this game looks and the speed that it's going at, I don't know if any sort of ranged character would be able to stay away from that kind of pressure, but I think Human Torch would really excel in the air. Obviously for his super, I think he should have the supernova that he usually does. I think that's just a really basic thing, really basic home run right there. The next up is Invisible Woman. I think she'd probably have about mid to short range projectiles, obviously creating constructs with her shields, with the force field she can produce. Maybe for the super, she creates like a giant mace with her hands and everything. She has like gone full mecha Gundam mode recently and created like full suits of armor that obviously with the style of comics they can really show you, since they are normally supposed to be invisible. I feel like with the game and the stylization they have, they could really do some cool stuff with how her force fields are supposed to look as well. So she could really be a cool character, since she is arguably the strongest on the Fantastic Four as well. Then finally, Mr. Fantastic. He's just going to be Dhalsim from Street Fighter, man. I don't really think that there's too much of a need to give him any sort of projectiles. I mean, you could, obviously, if you want something bouncing around the screen, give him something besides the giant arms, giant legs to, like, move around with. But I think he is absolutely, like, a shoo-in for the game. I think even if he does not make it in, or the Fantastic Four, like, each individual one doesn't make it in, I think we are going to see some Fantastic Four rep in this game. Obviously, we have Doctor Doom, but I think the Fantastic Four themselves have haven't been in a fighting game in a long time. And again, with Marvel vs. Capcom 3, the whole copyright issue they were going through at the time, even Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, we didn't have any Fantastic Four characters. They had Super Scroll, which kind of mixed all of the powers together, and that was kind of the substitute for the Fantastic Four. But I feel like now, with Marvel in a much better spot, and since this is going to kind of coincide with the release of Fantastic Four, I think they have a really good shot. But if they don't want to include all 4 characters, because again, that is 4 on a roster, that's automatically, like, again, an entire team on its own. I understand that that might fill up a little bit too much of a roster. So alternatively, if they did want to go maybe teams of 2 for these guys, kind of like an Ice Climbers or Cloak and Dagger type deal. Again, I'm trying to cover as much of a 10 as I can with these video game terminologies, so by all means, if you don't understand, I'll try to explain things as simply as I can. But again, they're characters who usually have tag teams, characters that come in sets of 2. I think if they did want to do that, they should absolutely go with Human Torch and the Thing on a team, and then Mr. Fantastic and Invisible Woman on a team, since they're the married couple, of course. And also Johnny and Ben have a really cool dynamic. I do love that, and again, just hearing how they talk to each other would be really funny. But again, if they did want to just have maybe one character, maybe Mr. Fantastic, or maybe the character is just a Fantastic Four, and you kind of swap up depending on a stance you're in or something along those lines. I think there are a lot of interesting ways to tackle the Fantastic Four, and I think, in all honesty, it's a matter of time before these guys make it in. Man, the Fantastic Four took up most of the video, honestly. But again, that was just kind of the biggest point. Just kind of listing off the ones as I go down here. I think Blade is absolutely a shoo-in. I don't know how he hasn't been in a fighting game to this point. Well, again, I know it's copyright stuff and, you know, Marvel bigwigs and everything. But either way, I think Blade as an HP stealing swordsman would be absolutely awesome. I think, what did I put vampire projectiles here? I don't even know what that means. Like the shuriken, the blades he has from his little movie, you know, obviously in Deadpool Wolverine also he does them, but he does have these projectiles he often utilizes. I think that would be really cool to use as well, since he does need something that can kind of help him play from mid-screen a little bit further away from people when he doesn't want to rush them down. Next up is the first deep cut I have here with Elsa Bloodstone. And she's actually pretty cool. She's essentially Buffy the Vampire Slayer in the Marvel Universe. She utilizes all these relics she finds. She uses a lot of different things. She actually does have super strength and a lot of powers that she inherited from her father. She's very associated with, I mean, she's kind of gone all over the place, essentially. She's often utilized with vampires and supernatural mystic type stuff. So I think she'd be a really good shoo-in and really good, like, juxtaposition for all the other magic characters that are going to come in, you know, Enchantress, Scarlet Witch, like that. They're very respectful of the magic. They're very, like, utilizing it as a weapon, and Elsa Bloodstone's kind of just like, I'm just gonna throw this at you, I'm just gonna throw this at you, like, oh, okay, cool, like, this is, you know, a weird little relic I found, whatever, let's see what it does. She has a very nonchalant attitude. She kind of reminds me of, if you're familiar with, again, Devil May Cry or Marvel vs. Capcom, she kind of reminds me of Trish, and I think she'd be a pretty good Trish stand-in for this game. Not that this game needs to find stand-ins for Marvel vs. Capcom characters, but again, I do think people are going to be looking for characters they gravitate towards, so kind of somebody who just throws the entire mystical kitchen sink at somebody is a really fun playstyle to use for this. The next up, I have Nightcrawler, and I'm really surprised this guy never made it into any older Marvel vs. Capcom games. I know, you know, the whole copyright thing with X-Men and Fox took off, you know, later in the cycle, but I'm surprised he never made it into any earlier Marvel vs. Capcom stuff. I mean, again, his moveset pretty much writes itself. He's a teleporting rushdown character who could utilize, again, the 3 blades that he normally utilizes in the comics, or he could just not utilize the blades at all and maybe just whip him out for the super or something like that. Nightcrawler is an absolute necessity, though. I'm surprised we haven't gotten this guy up to that point. It would absolutely be criminal if we didn't get him in. Then next up is Strong Guy as a grappler. So don't let the name fool you. He's actually a really cool character. I really like his personality as well. His whole ability is revolving around the physical strength that he has. But the caveat is that he has to take damage first. And wherever he takes damage, that's kind of where his muscle mass grows. So the more he gets hit, like on the leg, obviously, his leg's going to blow up and be giant. And obviously, as you can tell by the screen here, since if you are looking at the screen, that is, he got hit a ton on the upper body at first when he first developed the mutation. And he's kind of been stuck like that ever since, so he is absolutely a huge, big, imposing dude. I think he could play like a Birdie, or maybe like, what's the name of that big dude with the tires on his arms from Street Fighter 5? I did not like him, but I mean, whatever his name was, I think he could absolutely play a guy like that, a big grappler that kind of needs to grab you to let loose the damage, otherwise just gonna get slower and slower the more damage he takes. Then next up is Carnage. I feel like I say this with every character, but I'm surprised we never got this guy, man. I mean, we got Venom, and we got references to Carnage in the Venom skins, and I can kind of think of why we never got him prior. I mean, again, Venom and Carnage, their personalities are extremely different at this point, and I feel like that's the main thing. Venom is a lot more anti-hero at this point, kind of has been for a while, and Carnage is a lot more in that just villain. Just, I love being a villain, I love being evil, blah blah blah, you know, crazy psychotic guy. So I think Carnage would make a lot better use of the symbiote than Venom would. I think Venom's a absolute shoo-in for the game. I think Venom is just extremely popular on his own now. I don't even think he needs Spidey that much. I think a lot of people are just familiar with Venom, even though they still think of him as a Spidey villain. But Carnage would absolutely be insane. I mean, for those of you who have played Dragon Ball FighterZ, I think he would absolutely be a Kid Buu type of character, like a reckless rushdown type character who's just always stabbing things into the ground and like making these mid-range, long-range projectiles. He can also get really close to you, web zip. Like, I don't think he'd be that strong in the air. Maybe he'd just kind of make these like projectiles or form these things with the symbiote that he could use to hit people, but Carnage would be really sick to see as well. The next up, I got Moon Knight, and this is going to be my bias showing. I absolutely love Moon Knight. I think he would be great. I would ideally see him as a stance-based character. So for those of you who don't know what a stance character is, it pretty much means that they can press a certain input to go into a specific stance, and usually they'll have combos or they'll have some sort of like moveset that swaps up when they engage with this stance, and I think this would work perfectly for Moon Knight to kind of show off his different personalities. I think he could have a stance for, you know, Jake, and then a stance for his other personalities as well, kind of just to symbolize like how each different Moon Knight approaches, you know, stuff from their angle. So maybe one where he tackles, and then maybe one where he's like a reckless rushdown, or maybe one where he backs up towards a projectile. But I think Moon Knight as a stance-based character would be really cool. Along with that, just having him do some pretty standard air combo since he can glide and everything. I think Moon Knight is an absolute shoo-in for the game. He absolutely should be too. And for a super, I'd absolutely want him to, you know, crash a plane into people. That's one of his favorite moves to do. I mean, he's only done it twice, but still, it's just really funny to do, and I think it'd be really funny to see on screen. Next up, I got Sentry and Void. So I don't know how they, you know, change the whole play style. I don't know if they just have it as Sentry for the main moveset and then only make reference to Void in like a couple special moves, or maybe the super that he does. But I think Sentry is kind of a shoo-in, especially with how much of a prominent role he is going to be playing moving forward in the MCU and everything. Again, I don't want to rely on the MCU for the character decisions, but I think the synergy is absolutely something that can't be ignored. I really doubt that Arxis is developing this without Marvel kind of whispering into their ears like, hey, you know, this guy's got a movie coming up, you should do this and that. So I think Sentry is an absolute shoo-in. Along with that, Marvel never really had a Superman type character, especially in the gameplay style sense. So I think Sentry would be really cool. Along with that, his power set really lends itself to anything you want to do with the guy. I mean, canonically, he could just do whatever he wants. He has like matter manipulation, atom manipulation, something like that. But either way, he could just do crazy stuff. He could do eye lasers. He could do like Hulk claps. He could do charges from like across the screen if you want to do a Superman type deal. But Sentry is absolutely a character that should be in the game. Next up, we have Daredevil, and again, Daredevil is a character that I've seen a lot of people asking for. A lot of people have been asking for him since who knows how long in Marvel vs. Capcom. Even when I was, you know, a soft brain baby and I was getting into Marvel vs. Capcom 2, I was like, where's Daredevil? Like, I know the red dude with the horns. Where is this guy? I was still, again, not super familiar with all this stuff. So I'm really surprised he hasn't made it in up to this point. I feel like I say that with every character, man. But a combo-heavy character, like, you know, bouncing the nightsticks off the ground, kind of ricocheting that maybe off the corners of the screen or something, or maybe like planning some things so that he can dodge whenever a assist comes in, because he does have that super sense hearing thing. I forget whatever it's called, the echolocation, whatever. I think something like that, just so it's not too similar to the Spidey sense counter that Spider-Man has. I think Daredevil's absolutely a shoo-in, man. I think he needs to make it into this. Next up is Magic. And this is just purely in line with Arxis and the style that they do. There is a main character that stars in the Guilty Gear series that they make, and his name is Soul Bad Guy. And the main thing is he's a big dude with a really cool sword, and he has a super that turns him into another guy called an install super, where essentially you get a buff for your super instead of this big cinematic thing. And I think Magic fits that build perfectly. Not saying that they need to translate Soul to this new Magic character one-to-one, but again, they have a lot of experience with this kind of stuff, and I think, again, Magic is practically they're screaming their name to get into the game, man. And again, with that being said, I do feel like there needs to be some more mutant rep in the game as well. I know we got Storm, and again, we've barely seen the starting roster, so I'm not going to complain about, you know, not seeing this and that, but I guess I should rephrase. The previous games in the Marvel vs. Capcom series, I feel like haven't done a lot to show the bigger piece of the Marvel universe. They haven't really gone into the cosmic aspect, into the mutant aspect even. And with that being such a big part of the Marvel universe, I feel like, again, they got to get some more mutants in there, and Magic is an absolute shoe-in. She's got connections to the mystic side of Marvel. She's got connections to the mutant side of Marvel. She is a really good bridge to kind of, again, if they want to do a story thing too, she could absolutely do leagues and bounds for them in a story mode they're going to do. So again, Magic as a heavy blade character with a Dark Child install, oh, that would go hard, dude. Next up is Green Goblin, Spider-Man's main villain, and I have another Spidey villain later on the list. Green Goblin, I don't know why a Spidey villain hasn't made it into the games. Well, we got Venom, that's what, never mind, I just figured it out right now. But Green Goblin, I've wanted to see him in the game for a long time now, man, in a Marvel fighting game. And I feel like, again, he's just super sick. His moveset pretty much writes itself. You could have him on the glider, you could have him more of a hand-to-hand combatant. He's not scared to get his hands dirty. You could have him for the super, kind of hitch people onto the glider and like do this big cinematic thing where he throws them off a bridge or something. Well, I don't know if that's a little insensitive to any Gwen Stacy's, but I mean, again, I think that'd be really cool to see Green Goblin with like grab strings, kind of grabbing people, slamming them into the ground, bouncing them off of it, picking them up again, just being this absolutely savage villain, like a billionaire that just beats people down. Really cool. I don't know if they'd play more off the Willem Dafoe angle for Green Goblin, or if they'd maybe play more of a calculating like Lex Luthor type villain, but I think Green Goblin would absolutely be sick, and he just really lends himself to the art style with this game. I'd really love to see their take on his design. Next up, another Spidey villain with Dr. Octopus, and this is going to be my bias showing. I absolutely love Doc Ock. I feel like he is one of Spidey's more influential villains. I think he actually passes up Green Goblin a lot of the time, but Doc Ock as a ranged attacker, kind of reliant on his arms to do a lot of the movement, pretty much all the movement, except for like any little inventions he has on his utility belt that he might whip out or something along those lines. I would really want him to focus on the whole arm movement though. And then for his ultimate, I'd actually want him to utilize an Octoling Swarm. So this is something new he has in the comics. They're pretty much little robots that compose his tentacles now. I'd really love if he had something like that. Next up is Scarlet Witch, and this is again kind of just part of the whole MCU thing. I feel like the MCU is absolutely going to be pushing for her to be in. She has become a really big part recently, and again, I feel like a lot of people really love the character, and I'm surprised she hadn't, again, been in any fighting games up to this point. So I feel like Scarlet Witch would absolutely be a combo monster, but predominantly in the air. So I feel like as soon as on the ground, she's probably going to have like mid to long range spells, kind of a zoner type deal. But I think once she gets in the air, that's going to be when she really shines. That's going to be the field that she plays the best in. I mean, she could have hexes, she could have like spells that you need to do certain inputs for, maybe even like a stance or something like that, where you can just like cast a hex and then it does a move, like different inputs. But either way, they could do a lot of cool things with Scarlet Witch. And again, I feel like we need more magic users in the game as well. I know we got Doctor Strange, we got Shuma Gorath previously, Gargantos, sorry about that. I feel like Scarlet Witch is a shoo-in, and for the ultimate, she could do like a no more mutants thing, or like no more enemy team thing, something like that. It wouldn't snap them out of reality, but something like that where it just does a heavy amount of damage. I feel like that's one of her more impressive feats, obviously, and I feel like that would be really cool to reference in her super. Then lastly, for the more fleshed out characters I have, is Miles Morales. I feel like, again, kind of in the same vein as Venom with Carnage, I feel like Miles kind of stands on his own 2 feet at this point. He's got a difference with Pete, and it's not really the personality. Well, their personalities are different, but the main difference between Miles and Peter is their powers. So Peter, obviously, he's kind of turned into the gadget guy at this point. He's still, physically stronger than Miles, I think, unless Miles passed him up a while ago. But Miles, with the, invention of the bioelectricity and everything, he's kind of got a leg up on Spidey when it comes to, range stuff and projectiles. I feel like he could absolutely excel as a mid-range character, maybe not Rushdown and not a zoner entirely, but a character who kind of sets up, zips around the map and sets up these little electric traps waiting for people to kind of fall into them. I'm trying to think of the guy's character, the name now. I think it's Urian from Street Fighter, something along those lines, where he sets up a wall or a projectile of electricity, kind of bounces people around. I think that'd be a really cool angle for Miles, and just so they don't end up making him a palette swap of Spidey. I think, again, Miles can stand on his own 2 feet, and I think he has earned a spot in the roster. Then for these last 8 characters, I actually haven't thought of a moveset or a playstyle or a super or anything for these guys. So if you guys have any ideas for how these guys should play, by all means, leave it below in the comments. I'd be happy to take a peek at it, and I'm probably going to end up doing more videos like this down the line. I love speculation type stuff, like I said, so I'm probably going to make more like this. But getting into the last 8, starting off with it, I have Namor, or Namor, however you want to pronounce it. Namor is a really big part of the Marvel Universe, always has been, and again, I think it was a copyright reason that he never ended up getting into anything. And I feel like now, since Marvel kind of has all their big guys back in house, I feel like Namor, the first mutant as they call him, I believe, he definitely deserves a spot, man. Again, King of the Seas and everything, I feel like he definitely should make it into the game. And along with that, he does have a pretty interesting kit with the, the winged ankles. Lost the word there. The winged ankles and everything. He could definitely use that stuff. I'd love to hear him scream Imperious Rex during his ult or something like that. Again, just really geek out over that. But Namor is absolutely a shoo-in for the game. I feel like he should be, and I feel like he's probably going to end up making it, in all honesty. Then next up, I have a, little bit more of an obscure mutant in armor. So her whole ability kind of revolves around the ability to create these little things that end up acting like armor for her, and she can lose them. They can get knocked off of her. She does take a little bit of time to end up rebuilding them. It's pretty much like a walking, like, Gundam, like, mech suit. So I think a character that works along those lines would be really cool. Maybe she could lose pieces of armor, or like when she has it built up enough, she wouldn't take chip damage when she ends up blocking people. She'd probably move slower the more armor she ends up getting. Maybe she'd break off the armor as she hits you with, special moves or something along those lines. And then she has a special move where she can rebuild the armor, but maybe she has to stand in place for a little bit. Either way, her power set is just really cool, and I feel like kind of jives really well with the whole fighting game space. So again, they could really cook with armor. Next up, I have Man-Thing, and Man-Thing is absolutely a link to the more mystic, like, creepy side of Marvel, horror-esque almost. And with the whole Werewolf by Night thing, I feel like a lot of more people have been exposed to him. And Man-Thing, honestly, is kind of a deep cut. Sorry, I know for a lot of Man-Thing enthusiasts, they're going to want to say he's more popular, but the general consensus I've seen is that a lot more people are aware of Swamp Thing than Man-Thing. So I feel like, again, with the benefit that, again, Rivals did for Jeff and Luna, I feel like they could absolutely do it for Man-Thing. I feel like, again, maybe I'd hate to, again, compare to Injustice, but Swamp Thing kind of has a moveset that I feel like he would essentially kind of move the same as. I do love that little passive that Swamp Thing has where he kind of walks around and he leaves like a flower trail behind him. So Man-Thing could absolutely play like, throwing plants out, things along those lines. And I feel like Marvel doesn't have a lot of plant-based powers either. So Man-Thing could definitely fit the bill for this. Then next up, I have Luna Snow. So absolutely this is going to come from Rivals. I was not really aware of the character prior to Rivals, but I feel like she is getting a lot of traction, in all honesty. Again, I think that her power set is really cool. I know Marvel doesn't have a lot of guys who utilize ice and everything like that. So again, her power set is really unique, and the fact that she is a K-pop star does also kind of tie into the whole interesting angle. Kind of same as Dazzler, balancing the whole superhero and idol thing. I feel like it's really cool. So either, they could put Dazzler in or Luna Snow, or maybe they put both of them in and just have them, have a rivalry or something like that. I think that'd be really cool, but I think Luna Snow is really popular now. She has gained a lot of traction, so I think she is kind of a shoo-in for the game. Next up is going to be Punisher. Again, another guy I'm surprised we haven't seen in any of the Marvel vs. Capcom games. Again, I don't think there's been a copyright issue with the guy, and I don't know if it has to do with the skull on the chest. Maybe. I know it's kind of a censorship issue in some countries, so again, Marvel Rivals figured out a way around it. I think Arxis can as well. Punisher would be a really cool character to have. I don't think he'd be a zoner. I think he'd kind of be sort of like a guy that, again, just throws the kitchen sink at people. He might have like an RPG for long distance. He might have like a grenade he throws out for short distance. If you guys are familiar with Marvel vs. Capcom, I think he could kind of play like Chris, in all honesty. And I wouldn't be mad at that. I think Punisher would be really cool. Next up, I got Mr. Negative, who is a newer Spider-Man villain, and he's actually really cool. I want to see him in Rivals, but if he doesn't make it into Rivals, I think he'd be really cool to see in this game. I don't know exactly how the moveset would work. He does kind of, have that whole gimmick of positive and negative stuff. He has like a dark blade that he can utilize. I don't know if it would like deal percentage based damage over time or something to cut HP down whenever you get hit by it. I think the dark blade, or that blade he has, should only be used in special moves though, since he is really good at hand-to-hand fighting. I think the blade would be really cool for his moveset. And again, he almost won out over Doc Ock, and I have a really big bias for Doc Ock. I feel like, again, the importance of a game like this is not only, you know, making it true to the characters, making it fun, first of all, and everything, but also introducing people to lesser known characters. And I think, again, Mr. Negative perfectly fits the bill. Then next up is Quicksilver, Marvel's speedster. And Marvel hasn't had a speedster in a fighting game from what I've seen. Even in Marvel vs. Capcom, I mean, they didn't really have anything like that. So a guy who's kind of like blinking around the field, moving at like super quick pace, something along those lines, that would be really cool to see. Again, I don't want to make comparisons to Injustice, but Flash had a really interesting moveset in that game. Probably one of the more interesting and entertaining to watch movesets. Speedsters are really fun to watch, whether it's in the movies, whether it's in a fighting game. I think Quicksilver absolutely does deserve a spot in the game, and I'm probably thinking of a moveset for this guy after the video ends here. I think Quicksilver needs to make it in, dude. Then lastly, I have Enchantress. She's an Asgardian who utilizes magic. And again, I just feel like they need a lot more magic wielders in the game. And I feel like Enchantress kind of lends herself perfectly to that. They could have Loki, or they could have, you know, maybe Hela, even though she doesn't use magic too often. But I feel like Enchantress kind of just fits the vibe of the game a little bit better, in all honesty. And again, with that being said, Loki already kind of had a spot in Rivals. I don't see them doing Enchantress in Rivals, in all honesty. I think that she would be really good for the Fighting Souls game, though. I think she'd be awesome. But yeah, those are just my ideas. Man, the video ended up running a little bit longer than I thought it was gonna. If you guys like this type of content where I'm kind of just rambling and I leave just stuff on in the background, by all means, let me know. I'd be happy to do more videos like this, always churning out these ideas. The longest part of these videos is honestly just writing everything out as far as the move set, kind of balancing stuff out as I go. But by all means, if you guys want to see more characters, or you guys have any ideas for how these guys could play, leave them below in the comments and I'd be happy to take a peek. Otherwise, peace.